r/AskReddit by Reddit. What's a family secret you didn't get told until you were older that made things finally make sense? Please like and subscribe to my channel. Thanks. That my sister, she was 16 when I was born and kicked out, is my mother. Her mother, my grandma, raised me as her daughter. It doesn't end there. I was a product of abuse from a family friend. To this day I don't know who my real dad is. My grandma was in her 40s when she had me, and my sister was sent to a boarding school when she was pregnant with me. My sister has no idea that I know. Wait, so they kicked their daughter out when they realized she was being abused by family friend. They didn't believe her about the abuse and thought she was worldly. You know how the heavily religious could be. My sister hated me as a kid and I never understood why. It all made sense. Who wants a constant reminder of a traumatic situation and your family basically calling you a WH*RE and turning their backs on you around? Wow, that's so sad. They could have tried to turn around an awful situation, but instead they just made it worse. That my grandmother's husband was a pedophile. All of a sudden I knew why my uncle was so weird and would pick me up and carry me away rather than let me stay alone in a room with him. For the longest time I thought my uncle was a real prude. My male cousins could all swim naked or run around in just their swim trunks, but my uncle made me always wear a swimsuit and put on a cover-up when I came out of the pool. He later admitted, if God forbid he touched you, I was making sure no one could try to blame you. They blamed all his other victims for being too tempting. My uncle, bless his heart, wanted to kill that man so bad. For that matter, so did my dad. Finding out the pedo was, well, a pedo, made all of their muttering to each other at family gatherings make so much more sense. Your uncle sounds like a really caring person. That's someone who cares about his family. I don't understand why they still allowed him to have any contact with you. At that point I would think I would just tell my grandmother that we can't condone this type of person's actions and are not making light of it, so he can't come around here ever. One of my most beloved mom's recipes was actually hamburger helper. She was a from scratch cook and literally everything else we ate she made herself. She never told us because it made her so mad that her kids would love a boxed meal so much. She did it once out of sheer desperation because she didn't have time to cook one night. We ended up loving it. I only found out in college because I begged for the recipe. I love giving her crap for it to this day. I begged my grandpa for years to get his Christmas fudge recipe and he always told me it was a family secret he'd tell me when I was older. When he passed away I thought the secret passed with him. Years later my mom told me that grandpa's Christmas fudge was the recipe on the back of the marshmallow cream jar. I laughed and cried because that was just so. Grandpa, I'm now the keeper of the secret family fudge recipe and have to make it every Christmas without spilling the beans to cousins, aunts, and uncles. This makes me so happy. That my aunt's close friend that she lives with is actually her girlfriend was about 22 when they told me. Never even thought about it until it was said. Weird how I was completely oblivious to this for so many years. Same. I didn't know my uncle's roommate was his partner until I was a teenager, years after his death. I also didn't know he died of AIDS and been a major activist, going to DC and pouring ashes of dead friends out on the White House lawn to shame Congress into funding research, etc. My older family members are Catholic and Grandma thought AIDS was his punishment for being gay. His partner never contracted it, and he's one of my closest uncles to this day, even though he's not related to me, and it's been 20 years. He has never missed a single major achievement day of my life. My pet rabbit got attacked by something a couple years after I got it. My parents found it dead and replaced it before I found out. I just thought my rabbit lived super long, but it was actually 2 rabbits. This happened over 10 years ago, and I found out last year. My parents did a similar switch with my beater when I was a kid. I was out of the state visiting my aunt, and he died while mom cleaned the tank. She called my dad, who happened to be in the next largest city, also a 2-hour plane ride away from home, and told him to buy another beater that looked similar. She also asked our neighbor to tell me about how fish can molt their scales like birds do with their feathers. It worked perfectly, and I had no idea until my new beta died several years later. I thought I had a world record going with my fish's lifespan. The fish were named Shiny because 6-year-olds are great at naming pretty fish. My kid's betta fish regenerated so many times we should have named him Doctor. This made me think about a gerbil I had as a kid. Gerbils typically live 2 to 3 years. Mine lived for a little over 6. When he passed away, he was about 3 times the size of a normal gerbil, but it is funny to think that my parents replaced my gerbil with a hamster. He was a good gerbil. I didn't know one of my cousins existed until I was about 10 years old. Turns out he was diagnosed with leukemia as a child, and I was a very sensitive kid, so my family decided not to tell me until the treatment was successful and he recovered. It would have been okay if they told me as soon as he was healthy again, but I guess they forgot. So the first time I met him, I was wondering how exactly I managed to forget the existence of a whole person. I thought that was going to end with your cousin passing away, and they just let you go on not knowing about them. But damn, they survived and just didn't mention it. From my father's family line, my great-grandfather killed my great-grandmother with an axe while she was sleeping. My grandma, who was the oldest one, raised all of her siblings. She was 19 at the time and just married my granddad, who was 19 too. Youngest sister was just 2 years old. They were 9 in total. I knew my grandma raised all her siblings, but I always thought it was because her mother died from some illness. I just found out when I was 17 and asked my aunt. Edit. Wow. This really blew up. Thanks for the upvotes and the kind words. Grandma is a real hero indeed. She always tells stories of how she managed to feed so many people. They were really poor back in those ages. First of all, mandatory, English is not my first language. Sorry for any grammar mistake. It's crazy and sad at the same time how many people have similar stories. I'll try to answer some questions, but why did he kill her? Did he go to prison? He was an alcoholic, came home drunk one night, and had the idea that she was cheating on him. She wasn't. Actually, he was the one who was having an affair and even had a kid with another woman. I never met them. He went to prison, got cancer and died. Nobody wanted to claim the corpse and give him a funeral. Sorry if this is intrusive or offensive in any way, but schizophrenia or some related mental illness wasn't the reason for the murder, was it? Asterisk, I suspect he had some mental illness, but he was never diagnosed. This was in the 50s, and we are from Uruguay. Mental illness was a taboo back in those days. So did your grandparents end up having biological children as well? Yes, my father was born 10 years after that and my aunt, the one who told me the story, was born 25 years after that. I have a great aunt whose children look nothing like her husband. Turns out he had mumps as a kid and it left him sterile. So he asked a buddy to contribute because he and his wife wanted kids. They kept this secret, insisting that the kids looked like someone on great uncle's side of the family. We never met any of them. 4 years until his funeral, when she decided to tell her kids that their biological donor was a man who died in the army. Yeah, it was weird, but it caused exactly the kind of chaos that great uncle would have loved. He wasn't a bad person, but he loved to cause some shock and horror on occasion, and the idea the whole family would be freaking out over this instead of crying for him would have made him laugh himself sick. Things he did while alive included the time he gave me a pet chicken without any input from my parents, the day he packed up a bunch of cousins and took us all to a theme park instead of to the boring family gathering he was supposedly headed to in the days before cell phones, and how he handled his son being gay. Long story short on that last one, he was scolding his daughter about being sexually active at 15 and lamented, "I specifically told you all to be gay until you got out of high school. Did no one obey me?" His son replied with, "I did, I'm gay, dad." And his response was, "See, he knows how to obey his father. This is why he's my favorite, you know." This was all done in a restaurant while other family members looked horrified. And yes, my cousin really was / is gay. His sister had a baby at 17 and her father's reaction to that was, "Well, the time to yell at you is over. If you're keeping it, we'd better start buying clothes. Kids are messy." That my mom was born from an affair. My grandma first got pregnant at 16 and then again at 17 with my 2 aunts. She actually got married like a week after turning 16. Well, when she was 21, she had an affair with a really rich dude, and thus, my mom was conceived. It was always weird to me that my aunts were tall, blonde, and quite sensible. Meanwhile, my mom is short, brunette, and bat crazy. My grandma ended up getting a divorce like a year later because of this. Also, the rich guy was also married and had a child with his equally bat crazy wife. So, I have an Aunt Stevie no one told me about. Kind of related, but after my grandma got the divorce and my mom was like 7, the rich guy's wife burst through the front window demanding that she buy my mom off my grandma. Like, she went through a sheet of glass. Explains why I'm so different from my aunts and supposed quote grandpa. Thank you for watching Reddit. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more r/AskReddit videos. Share your stories in the comment section below.